The Quest 3S has just been announced, and you might be wondering, should I buy this, or how does the Quest 3S compare to the 2 and 3? Well, I've been using the 3S for just about a week and a half, and I have some thoughts on it, so consider this my review of the Quest 3S. Now, this is going to be a relatively simple video. I'm going to talk about the things that I liked about this headset, and I'm going to talk about the things that I didn't like. And by the end of this video, I'm going to have answered 3 questions. The first one being, where does the Quest 3S stand when compared to the other Quest headsets? The second being, do I think you should get the Quest 3S as your first VR headset? And the third question being, do I think you should get a Quest 3S if you already have a Quest 2, a Quest 3, or PC VR? And just to be clear, Meta did send me this headset for review, but as always, I'm going to be completely honest, and you'll see that later on in this video. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Let's start with question 1. Where does the Quest 3S stand when compared to the Quest 2 and the Quest 3? And as you may have been able to guess, the Quest 3S is right in the middle between the two. So let's talk about what the Quest 3S does and why this is actually quite an important headset. Let's start with the resolution and the lenses. You get 1832 by 1920 per eye. That's actually the same resolution as the Quest 2, and that's not the only thing that's the same. Like the Quest 2, the lenses on this thing are also Fresnel lenses. And I assume for that reason, the Quest 3S uses the same mechanism as the Quest 2 for the IPD adjustment, with you physically moving the lenses to preset positions for the IPD. And because the resolution and the lenses are the same as the Quest 2's, that also means that the FOV is the same as the Quest 2's at 96 degrees horizontal. So at this point you're probably thinking, if the resolution, the lenses, and the FOV are the same as the Quest 2, then what is the point in this device? Well, for one, you get the new controllers from the Quest 3, which are better than the Quest 2's controllers. You also get the new audio system in this that's in the Quest 3, and this new design is a lot slimmer than the Quest 2 was. But honestly, these are the small changes. Let's talk about the 2 big selling points of the Quest 3S, starting with the pass-through. This is vastly improved compared to the Quest 2, which had black and white pass-through. On the 3S, you get full color pass-through, and if you actually look at the specs on their website, the cameras on this thing are exactly the same as the Quest 3's. There is one difference in the pass-through between these two devices, which is the Quest 3 has a depth sensor on it, and the Quest 3S uses 2 infrared sensors. I tested the pass-through on this thing by setting up my room and playing the new mixed reality game Starship Home. And if I'm being honest, I found it really hard to see a difference between the pass-through on the 3S and the Quest 3. If I had to be really picky about it, I would say that the pass-through on the Quest 3S had an ever so slightly pinkish tone, but I'm assuming that's just because of the different panels on this. But yeah, I didn't really notice any difference in the tracking, the hand tracking, all of it seemed to work really well on the Quest 3S compared to the 3. There is one more thing that I want to say before anyone goes out and buys one of these headsets for the pass-through. When you see videos like mine showing off the pass-through, it makes it look really clear. So I think it's important that I state that what you actually see with your eyes when you put the headset on is a bit grainier compared to the videos you'll see online. I'll put a comparison on the screen now. On the left is the pass-through without any editing done to it, and on the right I've edited that same footage to try and emulate what you actually see with the headset on. Now that isn't 100% accurate, but I still think it's important to give you a rough idea of what the pass-through looks like before you get it. Because take my word for it, it's still really cool, and once you start playing a game, you don't even notice the grain. Now let's talk about the second big selling point of the Quest 3S, which is its processor. This thing has exactly the same processor as the Quest 3. What this means is the Quest 3S will be able to play any game just as well as the Quest 3, and that is a massive improvement in performance when compared to the Quest 2. To test this, I played one of my favorite Quest games, Dungeons of Eternity, and the gameplay was so smooth with no frame drops. So now that we've finished comparing the 3S to the Quest 2, let's compare it to the Quest 3. As I mentioned, the controllers and as far as I'm aware, the speakers are the exact same between the Quest 3S and the 3, with the pass-through on the 3S also feeling pretty much exactly the same as the Quest 3. I also tested both of these headsets' microphones, and I do think that the Quest 3's is a little bit better, but I'm going to play them both for you now and you can decide. Okay, so this is a test of the microphone on the Meta Quest 3S. Okay, hello, this is me testing out the microphone on the Meta Quest 3. Also, these head strap connectors are the exact same between the 3S and the 3. So if you were to buy a 3S and you knew someone that had a spare Quest 3 Bobo head strap, Zyber head strap, any accessory head strap, it will work with the Quest 3S. I did also test the 3S's capabilities with PC VR and wireless PC VR, and from my testing, it seems to work just as well as the Quest 3. Now let's move on to one of the big changes between these two headsets, and that's the lenses and the resolution. The Quest 3 has higher resolution, but most importantly, it has pancake lenses which are straight up better than the Fresnel lenses in the Free S. What this means is if you put the Quest 3S on and you keep your head still and use your eyes to look around the edges of the lens, it gets blurry. If you were to do the same test with the Quest 3, anywhere you look would be crystal clear. The better lenses and resolution also means that the Quest 3 has a higher FOV than the Quest 3S at about 108 from my testing. Another small difference that I noticed is that the Quest 3S doesn't have a sensor on the inside of the gasket, whereas the Quest 3 does. What this means is when you take the Quest 3 off your face, it instantly knows that you're not in the headset anymore and it turns off the screens. And because there's no sensor on the 3S, when you take your headset off, it takes it a second to realize that you've taken off the headset using the cameras, and it takes a second to go into standby mode. They both go into standby mode still when you turn them off, but there is still a difference between the two. Now I know we just went through a lot of specs and comparisons really quickly there, so let me try and simplify it a bit. Imagine that the Quest 3 is a sports car and the Quest 2 is a normal car. The Quest 3S is like they took the normal car, took the engine out of it, and put the engine from the supercar in the normal car, along with some extra little bits and bobs. So now this upgraded normal car can go just as fast as the sports car, but it doesn't have all of the premium bits the sports car has. And that's why the 3S is an important headset. The Quest 2 is like 4 years old now, and it can't run the new games that well. So now that the Quest 3S is replacing the Quest 2, it's raising that lower bar. And what that means is we'll be able to push VR gaming a bit further because we're not being held back by the Quest 2's low specs. Now, let's move on and talk about some of the things I don't like with this headset. And if you watched my Quest 3 review, you'll know exactly where I'm going with this, because the strap that comes with the Quest 3S is exactly the same as the one that comes with the 3, and I don't like it. Whenever I've used this strap, it puts all the pressure on the front of my face, and it causes me to get a massive headache after about 30 to 45 minutes of play. And some of you said on my Quest 3 video, why don't you just loosen the strap? I've already got it as loose as it will go. If I loosen it anymore, it's gonna be like floppy on my head when I move around. Now Meta, I've told you this once in the last video, and I'm gonna tell you this again. You only get one chance at a first impression. So the first time someone tries VR, you have to get two things right: the immersion and the comfort. And if someone gets a brand new headset for Christmas, puts it on, but after half an hour they have to take it off because they have a massive headache, they won't want to try this again. And there's a chance they'll even tell other people, hey, VR sucks, it gave me a massive headache. And it's not the VR, because again, like the Quest 3, this is offering something really cool for the price, but it's the strap that is the problem. Then the other negative that I have about this device, which I just simply do not understand, is they got rid of the headphone jack. The Quest 3 has a headphone jack, yeah? The Quest 2 has a headphone jack. Why did you get rid of it? Like, why? I personally actually used the headphone jack on my Quest 3, so the fact that this doesn't have that is kind of annoying. So that would mean I'd have to plug in the headphones into the USB-C, but then if I want to charge my headset while I'm using it, it's already being used and there's only one USB-C slot. You see the problem here? So the only options I'd have is to either use Bluetooth headphones, which adds latency, or get one of those USB-C dongle, like with the earbud wireless headphones, but that adds at least another $100 to the price, which isn't great. And as a content creator, this is super important. In my case, I use the USB-C slots to plug it into my computer for the recordings. So for me personally, I just can't use this headset for recordings or streaming. It just seems like such an odd choice to me, because I can't imagine removing a headphone jack lowering the price of the headset that much. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. Now I know it might seem like I've been being really negative, so I want to end this section of the video with the biggest selling point of the Quest 3S. This thing cost $300. So to summarize, with this headset, you get the power of the Quest 3, the Quest 3's pass-through, all for the price of a Quest 2. And that is a stupidly good deal for anyone that wants to try VR but doesn't want to pay a high cost. And because of that reason, it makes it really hard not to recommend this for first-time VR users. So let's bring it back to those remaining two questions. Do I think you should get the Quest 3S as your first VR headset? Yes, but more specifically the 128GB version and not the 256GB version. Let me explain. Let's take a look at the new Quest headset lineup, where you have three options. So we have the Quest 3S 128GB at $300. Then you have the Quest 3S 256GB model at $400. And then finally you have the Quest 3 at $500. So looking at the first option, you have the Quest 3S 128GB option, $300. This is a great option for someone wanting to try VR for the first time. You get the performance and the pass-through of the Quest 3 at a low price. Now let's see what you would get for your money if you were to save up and get one of the more expensive options. Let's say you save up the $200 and get the Quest free. What do you get for that extra $200? You get pancake lenses so things look clearer, you get higher resolution so games look better, you get a higher FOV so when you put the headset on you can see more, you get a headphone jack, and you get 384 gigabytes more data storage for a total of 512 gigabytes. Now that we know that, let's see what you get for $100 more with the Quest 3S 256 gigabytes. You get an extra 128 gigabytes of storage for a total of 256 gigabytes, and that's it. So hopefully you see my point. The 256 gigabyte model just isn't worth the extra cost in my opinion when you could save up $100 more and get the sports car with all of those extra features. Or alternatively, you could get the 128 gigabyte model and then you'd have $100 left over to buy some accessories like maybe a different head strap or like a charging dock, whatever you want. Then we have the final question, which is, do I recommend you get a Quest 3S if you already have a Quest 2, a Quest 3, or PC VR? So let's start with the Quest 2, and like I've hopefully made it clear, the Quest 3S is like you take this Quest 2 and you put a sports car engine in it with some extra goodies like the Quest 3 controllers and the color pass-through. So in that case, I would say that the Quest 3S is a nice upgrade. But if you can get the Quest 3, that will feel like a much more worthwhile upgrade if you already have a Quest 2. Next is if you have a Quest 3, do I recommend you get the Quest 3S? And the answer to that is no, I do not. You already have the sports car, there's no need to get this. The Quest 3 is simply better than the Quest 3S. And finally, do I recommend you get a Quest 3S if you have PC VR? And this is an interesting one again. Maybe you're feeling a bit like I did last year when I didn't have a Quest 3, and I was looking over at like the Quest platform being like, damn, they get some cool exclusives like Assassin's Creed, and this year they get Batman, and it's just like, man, I want to play those games. Well, now you have the option of getting the Quest 3S at a more reasonable price point than the Quest 3 at $500. And that way you get to play all of the exclusive games with the same performance you get as the Quest 3. So essentially what the Quest 3S does is gives PC VR players a less expensive option if they really want to play those exclusive games. So yeah, hopefully that clears things up. I think the 3S is a really good headset for first-time VR users, and I think we're going to see a lot of new VR players this Christmas with one of these. So this headset, the Quest 3S, comes out tomorrow on the 15th of October, and if you'd like to buy that or any of the headsets I've talked about today, links will be in the description down below. And actually, if you use any of the links to buy any of these headsets, you'll get $30 of Quest cash, which can be used to buy whatever games you want on the Meta Store. Plus, if you buy either one of these headsets, they actually come bundled with the new Batman Arkham VR game, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, hopefully you guys have seen that I've tried to be as honest as possible when it comes to reviewing this headset, but again, I do need to say that Meta did send me this headset for review. And if you're still unsure if the Quest 3S would be a good fit for you, I'd advise waiting until after the 15th when other YouTubers that aren't affiliated with Meta get their hands on these headsets and they review them. That way you can be 100% confident in your purchase if you decide to get one. But yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and I hope you're having a really good October, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.